want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to feel the presence of God that is within us and all around us. And as we move into this time of prayer and meditation, I want you to listen to your soul. And what is the Spirit of God speaking through your soul trying to say to you? You know, most of us are pretty comfortable listening to the thoughts in our head, to that constant dialogue that is going on between our ears. And we know what we're thinking. And we have lots and lots of thoughts. And some of us are comfortable in listening to our heart and knowing what we're feeling. And we don't always know what we're feeling, but we know that if we pay attention to our heart, eventually we will connect with our feelings. But there's another voice within us, a voice that lives below both of those voices, that speaks directly to our soul. And it's the voice of God. And when we move our attention to our center, to our gut, to our belly, we begin to listen to what God is saying through each one of us. It's not our head, it's not our heart, but it's our soul. So today, quiet your mind, open your heart, but listen to your soul. Listen to what your soul is saying. Listen to the voice of God speaking through your soul. Take another deep breath. And what does your soul want to reveal to you? As we launch into this new year, what does your soul want you to know? You know what you're thinking. You may even know what you're feeling. But what does your soul want to reveal to you? Feel that deeper conversation. Feel the voice of Spirit speaking directly to you. That whatever is going on in your life, whatever the need, whatever the situation, move the focus down to your belly, to your place of intuition, and listen to your soul. For God knows. God always knows. And many times we get so busy listening to the chatter of our mind. Sometimes we get so overwhelmed with the feelings that we're having. And our mind can get so busy and our feelings can feel so overwhelming that we never move deeper. And then when we move down to our center, down to our belly, to the place where guidance lives, where Spirit speaks, and we hear that deeper conversation, and there's quiet. Quiet your mind. Open your heart. And listen to God. Quiet your mind. Open your heart. But listen to God. And as you hear the voice of God speaking through your soul, and we align our mind and we align our heart, we feel that power. That instead of going in 3 different directions, We actually align our mind, our heart, our soul, and we become powerful, for we express the glory of God. And your mind may want to argue, and you may have all kinds of feelings, but your soul knows the way. Your soul knows God's path for your life. Your soul is your connection to the divine. Listen. So in the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks for the voice of our soul being spoken powerfully, clearly within us. That we are of one mind, the mind of God. That our mind, our heart, our soul are aligned, and we are our most powerful self. For the Spirit of God goes before us, and the glory of God expresses in greater and greater ways in our lives. So in all things today, we open our mind, our heart, our soul to the voice of God in us. And all is well with our soul. And so it is. Amen. So I started this year by leading a workshop down in Phoenix last weekend. It's on a Friday and an all-day Friday, Saturday. And if you're thinking to yourself, why didn't I know that? Well, you can go to my website, revrichard.com, and you can sign up for my Tuesday morning meditation, and you can get all the information I'm doing now and through the eternity, for always. So I just want to make sure you know. So I led this 2-day workshop, and the title was Live Your Best Life. And so as I'm thinking about my last 4 talks with you, I wanted to give the gist of that 2-day workshop. And I can't give you all of it, of course, but I can give you a flavor, give you a taste. Because what I taught in those 2 days, I believe, is the thing that I love to teach the most, that is the most transformative, that makes the biggest difference in people's lives. So the title was, as I said, Live Your Best Life. So when you think about living your best life, what does that mean to you? Do you feel like you're living your best life now? Do you feel like you're living all the good that God has for you? Because it really begins by when we can identify and decide that what we want in our life. You know, some of us have a real difficult time identifying, deciding what we want. We can see all the possibilities, right? We can see all the good, we see all the things we could create, but we kind of get lost sometime in making that decision. And you know you are this person when you go to the Cheesecake Factory and they hand you a 16-page menu and it takes you 2 days to decide what's for lunch. Right? For some of us, making decisions and identifying what we want is easy peasy. We just do it. We just decide. Right? But for some of us, that decision's a little daunting. We know that whatever decision we make, there's going to be an infinite number of things that we didn't decide upon. And as spiritual beings, that's kind of the dilemma that we find ourselves in, is that we walk into this candy store of life with all the possibilities, but you can't eat it all. You can't have it all. You actually have to pick what the highest and the best is for you. And by picking, you're actually excluding everything else. So sometimes we don't want to pick. We don't want to decide. We don't want to identify what we truly want, because then we have to say no to everything else, to say yes to those things that deeply, profoundly satisfy us. In my life, I have begun to use what I call a decision matrix. And a decision matrix is the way that I decide on those important decisions, how I'm going to decide. And for me, the decision matrix works like this. I ask my head, I ask my heart, I ask my soul. And what's amazing to me is that we can get 3 different answers at each level of our being. Because how many of you know that your head always has an idea of what you should do next? Right? How many of you know that your heart, no matter what you pick, is going to have a feeling about what happens next? And sometimes our head and our heart are so busy. Our mind can be so loud. There can be so many thoughts that we never check in and connect with our soul, to our belly, to the place where intuition lives. So do you have a decision in your life in this new year? Is there something that you have to decide upon? We're going to do a little exercise right now, right in the middle of church. And I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. I'm going to think about whatever decision is before you to make this year. And I want you to move all your energy up to your head. I want you to listen to your brain. I want you to listen to your head, listen to your mind. And I want you to think about that decision and ask your brain, ask your mind, what should I do about or whatever it is? And just listen to what your head has to say. And your head has a story. It always does. And now I want you to move your energy down to your heart. Feel that energy of your heart space of love. What does your heart want to say about that decision? What direction does your heart want you to go? And now move down to your belly. And to listen to your soul. What does that deeper intuition, that place that listens to God, what does it want you to know? When you're ready, I want you to open your eyes again. How many of you could hear 3 different conversations going on within you? Conversation in your head, conversation in your heart, conversation in your soul. Because your head always knows. How many of you have listened to your head over and over and over again and made decisions by whichever your head, whatever the thought, whatever the conventional wisdom was, whatever looked the smartest? We make the decision from our head, and we feel fairly confident if we make good decisions from our head that it's all going to work out, and most of the time it does. Some of the time it does. Once in a while it does. And then some of us move our focus down to our heart. We begin to listen to what our heart has to say. And sometimes our head and our heart aren't on the same page. The way that we're thinking and the way that we're feeling are at odds with each other. And sometimes they're very different. And then we feel more comfortable sometimes listening to our heart and making decisions based on our heart. And then we move down to our belly. Down to our gut, downward to where intuition lives. And we begin to listen to our soul. And sometimes our head says, go this way. We have feelings about going this way. And our soul says, both of you are so adorable. But the highest and best way is for us to go this way. That there's a completely different conversation. There's a completely different game. There's a completely different possibility if we can just quiet our mind, open our hearts, and listen to our soul. Now, sometimes in some decisions, all 3 of those are at odds. They all want us to go in different directions. And sometimes it takes us a few days in prayer to align our thinking, our feelings, and our intuition onto the same page. And when that happens, when we are a threefold, when we align all 3 aspects, we become the most powerful version of ourselves. Because at that moment, when our head, our heart, and our soul are in agreement, we become the most powerful version of ourselves. And sometimes when we need to make a quick decision, we just answer from our head. And it may work most of the time. but it is not the most powerful version of you. The most powerful version of you is when your head and your heart and your soul all line up, because then in that moment you are expressing God. So if you ask your head and your heart and your soul, what do I want to create this year? I would be curious as what your head says, what your heart says, and what your soul says, and to see if you can get on the same page. To see if all three levels of you can align in one direction as you move into this new year. See, my idea today is I want you to have 5 possibilities. I want you to have 5 possibilities of what you could create in this new year. 3 of those possibilities, I want those possibilities to be things that you have deemed as possible. 2 of those things, I want you to be things that you have deemed as impossible. Oh, Richard, you can't create the impossible. Why? Yes, you can. And what I want to talk about today, why this is so important, is because I want you to identify the most important thing. And I'm going to give you three spaces, three possibilities in the realm of possible. But I want 2 of those possibilities to be what you consider impossible, because when we open the door to the impossible, we step out of our ego, we step out of our rational mind, and we step into a possibility that's greater than that. And one of the ways I look at life is usually happening at this level. And this level is the level of rational thought. And this is the level where you know how to create your life, where you've done it 100 times before. But this isn't the only level to life, that there's a higher level of life, and the higher level of life is when you actually begin to entertain the impossible and actually begin to contemplate doing the impossible in your life. Here's Lewis Carroll in Alice in Wonderland. And he wrote, "The queen was just asked Alice how old she was. And Alice smartly replied, I am seven and a half exactly." "You needn't say exactly," said the queen. "I can believe you without that. Now I'll give you something to believe. I am just 101, 5 months, and 1 day old." "I can't believe that," said Alice. "Can't you?" said the queen. It's in a pitiful tone. "Try again. Draw in a long breath. Shut your eyes." And Alice just laughed. "There's no use trying," said Alice. "One cannot believe in impossible things." "I dare say you haven't had much practice with this," said the queen. "When I was your age, I always did at least a half an hour. Why, sometimes I could believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." See, what I want us to talk about today is I believe that we've outgrown the possible. And that if we want to play with the big kids, if we want to spiritually grow and mature to the height of who we are, that I believe from time to time, we actually have to entertain the impossible. And my question is, did Jesus ask us to do the possible or the impossible? The impossible. That Jesus, I know, invited people to do the impossible. In Matthew 19:26, Jesus said, "With man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible." On May 25th, 1961, President John F. Kennedy announced before a joint special session of Congress the dramatic and ambitious goal of sending Americans safely to the moon before the end of the decade. Kennedy said this: "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. No single space project will be more exciting, more impressive to mankind, more important, and none will be so difficult nor as expensive to accomplish." See, the nation that I grew up in believed in impossible projects. When I was a child, I heard that speech and I believed it. That this nation wasn't just about what was probable, Well, we were willing to take on what was impossible and make it happen. And wherever you are in your life this year, as you're looking into this brand new year of 2025, are you about taking on the probable? Are you willing to take on what you've already done 100 times before, 1,000 times before, 1,000,000 times before? Are you going to live the same year over and over again? Or are you going to do that which you've never done before? And Jesus invited us into the impossible. Matthew 14:22. Then he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side. See, one of the things that I want you to see is that the disciples believed that it was their job to keep Jesus safe. They were his posse. They were his team. They were his peeps, right? And all of them were committed to their spiritual teacher, keeping him safe. And so he had this large crowd in front of him. And the disciples naturally, have anybody been in a crowd that turned bad? Have you ever seen that on TV where a crowd turns bad? It's a very scary thing. And sometimes crowds can go bad in just very unexpected ways. That's why it's always been a little bit of a concern for me not to have a back door here. Man, you don't give a minister a back door. He's on his best behavior all the time. You know, when I was in ministerial school, we had a rabbi teach the Hebrew Bible, and he said a thing I will never forget. He said a good priest, a good rabbi, a good minister is always one sentence away from being driven out of town. Right? It's true, right? That we got to play the edge. We're not here just to tell you what you already heard 1,000,000 times before. We're actually here to invite you to do that which you've never done before and to really spread your spiritual wings and see that you were meant to fly. So Matthew 14. Then he made his disciples get in the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountaintop by himself to pray. And when evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was many furlongs distance from the land, being beaten by the waves, and the wind was against them. And when in the fourth watch of the night he came to them, walking on the water. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear, but immediately he spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I, have no fear." And Peter said to him, "Lord, if it is you, bid me to come to you on the water." And he said to Peter, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, and he walked on water, and he came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying, "Man of little faith, why are you in doubt?" And then they put him back in the boat, and the wind ceased. And those that were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, he is the Son of God." So I want you to see this as your own life experience. And I want you to see the boat as all your past experiences. Every moment that you've lived lives in this boat. And in this boat is your life raft, and it's all your safety features and all the things that you have around you so that you don't have to risk, so that you don't have to be uncomfortable, so you don't have to do that which you've never done before. And something in Peter's soul demanded, when he saw Jesus walking on water, there was something in his soul that demanded that he do the impossible and said, "If you beckon me, if you say it's okay, I will get out of this boat and I will walk to you." And he was literally doing it until he looked at his fears. And the moment he began to look at his fears, he began to sink. And I want you to see that in the year ahead, this reality, this experience is going to happen to you over and over again. You're going to be in a soft, comfortable place where everything that you need is around you, where you know that you're safe. Your mind tells you you're safe, and yet your soul is going to say, "Get out of the boat. Do that which you've never done before." And if you look at Jesus, if you keep your eye focused on the project, you will walk on water. But the moment you look down upon your fears, you will begin to sink. And this is a metaphor for how each one of us is being called to live our life in the new year. Yes, you have a privilege of staying in the boat. And you can live the rest of your life comfortably in that boat. You can live the same year over and over and over again and never challenge yourself, never ask any more of yourself, never really listen to your soul. Your mind and your heart will tell you just to relax and enjoy the ride. And your soul will say, but I didn't come for that. I didn't come for the safety of the boat. I came to know that I could walk on water. And if I never walk on water, I really never fulfill my mission. I never really know myself as a child of God. So walk. Live your best life. Do the impossible. Choose to do that which you've never done before, to truly know that God is with you, and with God all things are possible. See, I think from time to time, we have to be reminded of that we're still in the boat. And sometimes in our life, it feels like we're outside of the boat, but we're really just in the boat and the wind's blowing. Because we know the moment we step out of that boat, we become fully alive. We begin to live our best life. Nelson Mandela said it this way: it always seems impossible until it's done. French proverb says it this way: to believe a thing is impossible is to make it so. Travaillon said this way: never tell a young person that anything cannot be done. God may have been waiting centuries for someone ignorant enough to do the impossible because they did not know it couldn't be done. How many of you have used a cell phone recently? Do you remember, some of you, when you were growing up, where was Dick Tracy's phone? How many of you have a phone that talks to your watch and sends you messages on your watch? Right? Remember Get Smart? Where was Get Smart's phone? In his shoe. He had to keep taking off his shoe. Thank God Apple didn't go that direction. Right? Right? But all those things, and we can think of many, many more just in our lifetime that seemed impossible. And it's up to us in our own life, in our own experience, for our own family to do the impossible. That when you look at your family, you were told certain things were possible and certain things were impossible. And for other families, they didn't have that same list. Some things were not on their list. Some things that were love or joy or abundance actually were not impossible for them. And over again, we are looking at our list and saying, what if this is no longer impossible for me, for my family, for the world? Christopher Reeve said it this way: for many of our dreams first seem impossible, then they seem improbable, and then we summon the will and soon become expected. Salvador Dali said, it's either easy or it's impossible. I want to share a quote from Napoleon Bonaparte, because sometimes a narcissist puts things in ways like nobody else, right? The word impossible is not in my dictionary. How adorable is that? Right? And I want you to see that sometimes we actually need a voice within us that challenges all our conceptions and ideas about what's possible and what's impossible. And what if this year you decide you're going to play a bigger game? For yourself, for your family, for the ministry, you're going to play a bigger game. And the game that we're going to play is this week, your homework is just 5 things. Just 5 things. I want you to come up with 5 possibilities for this new year. 3 of them, I want those to be in the realm that you know it's possible, that you could do it. You could do it with your rational mind. You could do it with your ego. You could do it with persistency. You could work harder, faster, smarter, do all the things you do. And all those things are possible. But 2 of these things I want to be impossible. 2 of these things would require God, would require you to reinvest yourself, to know yourself in a new way, to try things that you've never tried before, to actually become a greater expression of you. Now, those 3 things, there's nothing wrong with them. But growth comes from doing the impossible. Now, this week, what's your homework? 5 things. 3 possible, 2 impossible. And I want you to see that we're going to pick 3 things from this level of life and 2 things from this level of life. You don't even have to decide this week. This week, your only job is 5 things. Next week, I'll tell you what to do with those 5 things. Thank God. Right? Because I want to make sure that there's room in your soul for that which God has not done yet through you, but wants to. That we're not here just to live the same life till we get so bored that we die. We are here to do over and over again the impossible things, and so that when we step into our next experience of living, we do this as a fully alive spiritual being, not somebody who's been asleep for years. We are becoming more and more the possibility that God had for us from the beginning of time. I am alive with infinite possibilities. Together? I am alive with infinite possibility. Will you pray with me? I invite you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God. To feel God's holy presence. To listen to your mind, your heart, but more importantly, your soul. What is the Spirit of God speaking to your soul today? What is the possibility that you've never truly opened to in your life? And today, would you be willing to open to the glory of God that is within you and do that which you've never done before? In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.